was not the building I thought it was, but it was right next to the building.
So we are
So
live.
nice.
It's good to give it a chance to.
No, it was, your map was fine. I had in my mind where I thought it was. And it matched in general with that. It was the fourth and the seventh. So I just skipped the deduction. The game is afoot. Did you watch the Sherlock Holmes? Oh, it's fantastic. You'd love it. You like Mark. The guy from Hobbit. Frodo. Not
So you have, so far you have Chesley, Mandizi, Spencer, and Burke watching.
Cool. All right, let's kick this thing off.
And even Doyle's watching.
All right, everybody. I have a microphone today. That's exciting. Can you hear me all right out in Facebook land? Give me a thumbs up there, Howie. All right, we got Sergeant Burke joining us from New York. We got Chief Doyle on Facebook. We got a few other people. So thanks for coming, everybody. Really appreciate it. Good turnout. Thank you. Doing these monthly, and each month we'll start off with just questions, kind of a state of the union. I can tell you what's going on in the unit, answer any questions that you might have, and then talk about one of our impact elements, just so we keep those very fresh, and talk about what we value and contextualize it, and not just make it a word that we never actually do, but take these words and say, how can we apply them to what we're doing every day? So today, the word is accountability. The A, an impact. The professionalism. Last time, now we're doing accountability. So as we're talking here and asking questions, think about what that means to you and how accountability applies at the Western Maritime sector of the 225th. All right, are we all ADS people in here? We got some SS guys as well. All ADS, all right. We've got Chief Doyle out in Facebook Live land. Okay, so a bit about what's going on in the organization before we ask questions. Colonel Lewis and Colonel Humphrey just went out to New York, and they met with a guy by the name of Dr. Bernstein, who's from SAF-AQ, Secretary of the Air Force Acquisitions. And he works directly for a guy named Mr. Dunlap. And Mr. Dunlap works for a guy named Dr. Roper. Dr. Roper is the head of the Air Force when it comes to acquisitions. And he's all about flipping the acquisitions process on its head. He has identified that our acquisitions process is broken in the Air Force and that it needs to be sped up. And so he is the one pushing the spark tanks and the innovation initiatives that are out there. So the person who works for him, Mr. Dunlap, has been charged with developing Advanced Battle Management System, which is the wave of the future for command and control. And it is evolving every day on what it actually is. It started off, the theory was it was a replacement for the Theater Air Control System, which is the AOC, CRC, AWACS, JSTARS, US, Air Support Operations Centers, JTACs. And now it seems to be getting bigger than that, much more, I don't know, like Skynet, sort of. It's not Skynet, but if anybody knows what Skynet is from, right on. All right, and then, so it's all about networking and cloud computing and pulling in sensors and internal information and fusing that in order to take advantage of artificial intelligence and machine learning to fight the next war against a peer threat from over a wide area. That's the challenge. Like someplace in the South China Sea, fighting somebody with incredible war-making capability over a huge area. Because if it's just a small area, we can, you made me lose my train of thought. Come on in. If it's over a small area, we can really take the power that is the US and allies air power and sea power and land power, and we can focus that on that small area. When we get spread out, all of a sudden it becomes very difficult, and it becomes even more difficult to command and control all those forces. So that's what ABMS is being designed to not fix, but take us into the future. All right, so we want to make sure we are part of that conversation. Not only part of the conversation, but we are part of whatever ABMS is. And so Colonel Phil Horn, our Weapons System Council chair and the Title 10 commander out at the Eastern Air Defense Sector, set up a meeting with Dr. Bernstein. He came to the Eastern Air Defense Sector. We had a great VTC where before he didn't know what a BCC was. Now he knows what a BCC is. He didn't realize all of the professionals that were resident in the BCC, and now he knows. He didn't realize all of the cutting edge stuff that we're doing, like integrated fire control and integration of Talon Thresher, and what's called Jarvis, which is a NORAD ecosystem that is machine learning and artificial intelligence. The things that he is trying to get at with Advanced Battle Management System, we're already doing on a smaller scale with NORAD J6. So that was a great meeting. I was in a VTC with General Sasseville yesterday. ABMS, I brought it up and said that Colonel Lewis and Colonel Humphrey got over there, and he was like, who can brief me on ABMS? And I said, I got the perfect person to brief you. We'll work with your staff and we'll get him in front of you. So Colonel Camel, we're trying to get him out to brief General Sasseville, our 3-star at 1st Air Force here in the very near future, with Colonel Lewis going with him. So that's what we're doing. Some other things that I just mentioned that is going on, CTC, IFC, which is our ability to track an aircraft, take that information, pass it over the data link to a shooter, the shooter being able to employ weapons on that track. We would be the first command and control unit to be able to do that. We did tests out at Huntsville a couple weeks ago on whether or not we could actually do that with the JMAC CTC, which JMAC is a combat ID capability that our DOK guys have been working on, along with 1st Air Force A8. And so that capability is cutting edge, really cool. What we figured out, Smack Davis, Major Davis figured out that the system that JMAC is on would help us do that IFC stuff. So we tested that, it worked great. All tests indicate that we could actually do that in certain parts of the US. So that's a thing we're working on. The Jarvis is potentially a replacement for the BCSF down the road. So what's happened, and actually I say down the road, when we think 10, 15 years. When I say down the road, I mean next couple of years. And so NORAD, led by J6, General Caldwell in J6, has taken the concept of innovation and has just gone bonkers with it when it comes to developing the NORAD ecosystem and artificial intelligence, machine learning. Major Davis was working with Dunford, Major Dunford back at the Eastern Air Defense Sector, and they're working with Defense Innovation Unit, which is stationed out of Mountain View, California, right in Silicon Valley. And they took 54 companies. The 54 companies pitched ideas and concepts. They were able to narrow it down to 10 companies, and then the 10 companies had a nerd off, I guess is what you would call it. It's cool to be a nerd now, so it's okay that I say that. But they all showed what they could do and their concepts and ideas, and they narrowed it down to two companies. And those 2 companies are actually going to develop a prototype for a next generation mission system for us up on the ops floor that does really cool things like pattern of life analysis and cataloging of radar data, historical radar data going back like 6 months. And then it'll say, well, this aircraft is taken off from this airport. The machine is doing this. Let's see what other aircraft have taken off out of this airport on those same characteristics, same, climb out, same speed, things like that. And then it'll give you, it could be these aircraft. And then based on something else, it'll go, all right, we've narrowed it down. And then all of a sudden, we might be able to get a tail number without ever even laying eyes on that aircraft and saying, based on everything that the machine is doing all this, based on everything we're seeing out of this aircraft, we believe it's this, and we believe he or she is going here. That's pretty cool stuff. And that could be a reality on our operations floor in the next year. All because we are taking that rapid acquisition, innovation concept, and we are putting our money where our mouth is by taking a resource like Slacky Troush, Major Troush, and saying, your job is innovation. Your job is to make phone calls all day, connecting the dots, making sure that we are part of the SBIR grants that are out there, making sure you're part of all the telecoms we need to be in, so that we are part of the conversation, and we're at the table enjoying dinner and making sure that we're not the dinner that everybody is enjoying. The saying is, if you're not at the table for lunch, then you're the lunch. Yeah, so I don't want to eat lunch. I don't know about you guys, but there are no threats to the Western Air Defense sector. I don't want those comments to turn into, oh, they're shutting us down or anything like that. My comments are purely intended to tell you we are on the cutting edge and we're doing some pretty awesome things. So that's on the technological side what we're doing. Mission-wise, you guys are killing it, just absolutely killing it. I look forward to the next time NORAD comes in here and gives us an inspection, because I can't wait to show them what you guys are doing on the ops floor. AWACS, AWACS just recently had a bad grade on their AIF. That happens. We've been there, right? So it is not an indictment of the E3 community. They have a tough situation that they're dealing with. They are spread so thin and tasked with so many things that the NORAD mission is not their top priority, and yet they get inspected every year on doing the NORAD mission. And it's not like you guys, where you get to do it day in and day out, and then you're inspected, right? These guys don't touch NORAD for a year, and then NORAD shows up and goes, all right, we're gonna grade you on it. And if you fail, it's gonna be an enormous emotional event for your entire wing. So good luck, everybody. So we are helping them significantly with trying to get back on track. We're gonna start doing weekly tabletop exercises with them, which I think is gonna be awesome for us as well, because we'll be able to take a handful of operators, put them in the conference room, and throw out a scenario thrown out by Colonel Campbell. And there'll be Eastern operators involved as well on the VTC, and we will just work with the E3 crews and say, well, if this happens, then on this radio, I'll make this call, and I would expect something to come back from you. What would you respond? And then they'll come back at us with their response, and then we can talk about, well, is that right, or should it be tweaked a little bit? So we're going to do stuff like that. We're going to try to incorporate them into live fly as much as possible. We're going to try to do sim over live with them, meaning they'll actually take off a jet, they'll do some training to get RAP numbers, and then on their way home, before they power down their system, perhaps we will put in sim tracks that we send to them via data link, and they can practice O&E intercepts using our sim tracks that we're driving out there. So we're going to do that with Tinker, and we're kind of leading the way on that one as well. So good job. My hat's off to you. The TRBs that we're doing, the ideas that are coming out of those TRBs, your voices are being heard, and they're making a huge difference, because we're changing our tactics to get at some things that you've identified don't make sense, and we're making the NORAD enterprise better every day. So thanks for that. All right. Status of discipline, there's really nothing to talk to you guys about right now. Do you have any questions about anything? I can answer some questions. I can't answer other questions because of privacy issues. Okay, so everybody feels like they've got the answers that they need on things that are going on?
Something specifically for discipline, or maybe a question?
Specifically on this one for discipline, but there aren't many takers, so on anything. What do you got? Did you have something, Joe? Or are you just
I got it. Okay, so going back to the AMS, I know it's a huge topic in the Air Force. Does that, and it's Air Battle Management System, does it account for, across the DoD, is it taking into account the naval forces, the Army, all the other components, or is it specifically geared towards an air and space
So I don't think anybody knows just yet. It is right now it's an Air Force project, right? But everything that we do is more and more joint. So much so that they are taking MDC2, which you might have heard, that multi-domain command and control, and they're saying, no, it's joint, JADC2. Joint, anybody know?
Joint all domain.
All domain, thank you. Joint all domain command and control. So MDC2 is the Air Force's thing that we're working on that will feed into JADC2. And it makes a lot of sense because we don't fight wars as an Air Force, we fight wars as a military, right? So whatever ABMS is, it will be heavily influenced, I'm certain, by joint concepts and joint operations. And I don't know if you're gonna be sitting next to a Marine Corps controller while doing ABMS. I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised if we don't do something much more jointly in the future and try to get out of our stovepipes of excellence. Okay.
So it sounds like ABMS is still in like the concept refinement stages. Is there any kind of timeline, or is there any kind of point where it's like, hey, all the good ideas have been collected, here are the requirements for the system, and now we start, making it more concrete?
Yeah, it's so different than what we've ever seen before, because usually there is a big project and there are milestones and timelines and things like that. And Dr. Bernstein specifically said, this is not your father's big Air Force project. This is rapid innovation. Whoever comes to us with a good idea, we're gonna try to plug it in and see what works. So there's actually a demo in December, this coming December, of what ABMS is at this stage. And then they'll slap on some other things and figure out, does that work? And this could be like a monumental failure, and that's okay. And the reason that's okay is because the Air Force is trying to push the concept of it is okay to fail. We do not have to keep sinking millions of dollars into a project that keeps on going because we're afraid of failure, right? We sink some money into a project, we go, well, that didn't work, let's try something else, and for too long, this might be a political time bomb on, FaceTime, but like the F-35, that was something that just couldn't die because politically it would have been just viewed as too big of a failure. And so $900+ billion later, we have an F-35 that still has issues to this day, right? So the Air Force is trying to avoid that right now. So December demo, it's going to evolve as it builds.
Just on that, I thought it was interesting that you made the comment that Jarvis, whatever you guys find out, hey, once you've done that little project, it's your money, throw it at this bigger project, and we'll see what it works.
Yeah.
And like, he is open to taking anything. It was very eye-opening and very, very different to hear somebody say that.
Yeah, completely invited us to show them what we got. So that's what we're going to do. Bobby, you had something from Cyber?
Yeah, from Facebook Live, we have from Maverick Capristo. Would it be possible for Washington National Guard to fund a dozen or so T-coded instructors since the BCC isn't going to have a brick and mortar schoolhouse?
Yeah, so thank you for your question, Maverick. We are working on contract instructors. And Major Dalrymple has been working with ACC TRIS and Sonoran and some other SMEs within the enterprise on how many contract instructors we would need. And it looks like we settled on 10 total in order to meet all of our training requirements and meet our RAP that was just published 2 weeks ago. We would, if we got 10 instructors in all positions, not 10 instructors in all positions, 10 total instructors, and all the positions would be covered, with the exception, are there exceptions? Who's not covered?
So that would be, no, it would be,
All of them?
yeah, it would
Okay.
be all of ITMT, all of IQT, MQT, and 50% of out of cycle.
Okay. And then, so the burden, the other 50% of the out-of-cycle burden would be on us, so 3 or 4 students a year or so, maybe more, 5 or 6. So there's no money for that, though, right now. And ACC TRIS worked the numbers on how much it would cost, and it is millions of dollars to pay for those contract instructors at WADS and EADS, and then Hawaii and Alaska is getting on board, although ACC doesn't pay that bill. But it's not out of the realm of possible. So, First Air Force A8 is actually helping us with the POM process, which is the way that you get money in 5-year increments called the FIDEP. So we are trying to get included in this upcoming POM to get money in a later year in order to fund these contract instructors. And then Major Dalrymple is working on the contract, which right now it's frozen. We can't mess with the contract, but he is working on the contract to add some lines to that contract within reason. We can't just throw all 10 lines on there and say, we can't get the money for it, but they're there, because that's not how contracts work. But we can put a few of those requirements into the contract, so as soon as we get the money, we can get a few of the billets funded, get the contractors in here, and then the next time the contract comes up, we can take some of that money, rework the contract, and get all full 10 instructors in the building. So, not blue suit, T-coded instructors, because they don't exist. We are just spread too thin in the blue uniforms, but contract instructors, in my mind, is just as good. And that is some of you guys, as you take off the uniform and are looking for something else to do, that opportunity is present where you can come back into the building, work for Sonoran, and do some instruction. All right, Jill, looking at you. We'll see. No, she's moving away. Okay, so Maverick, hopefully that answered your question. Nothing heard, okay? What else? All right. Any questions about the upcoming training program? Anything about that? Any questions about Squadron XP? Because right now it is just Squadron XP. Chief Doyle, you heard me say that. It is only Squadron XP right now. And then when Colonel Lewis and Colonel Humphrey would like to bring it up to the group, which I think will be shortly, then it'll be Group XP.
Can you just explain, because I don't think everybody in this room.
What is XP?
Well, yeah, what is XP? What does that mean? Where's the
Yeah.
converging of shops? And
So Skip could probably answer better than me what XP is, but what I would like XP to be is very similar to what you see at the wing level and other wings, is a group of individuals who do requirements, plans and programs, and they are working the bigger issues that affect all of the lower squadrons. So when it comes to requirements, for instance, we have been identifying our requirements and then sending them over to the SS and hoping that the SS would prioritize our requirements in accordance with the way we would like them prioritized. And then, so the process has worked, but we've identified the process could work better if it was at the group level. And in the same office eventually, there's not gonna be an SS addition to the XP shop yet, maybe down the road when their manning allows it, but right now, it'll just be ADS bodies going to the XP. But ideally, they're working out the requirements in the same office at the group level, and then going down to the squadrons and saying, here's the timeline, here's the priority, get it done. You know, and so it's coming from on high. So that's how the requirements piece will work, is putting those decisions that affect separate squadrons at a level, at an echelon that's above both of those squadrons to streamline the process. Plans and programs. So we've got some advanced programs in this organization that probably belong at a higher level, probably should sit in the group. There's also plans that, for instance, we'll get a new version of 3310. Right now 331020 is out. Who in this room provided any input on 331020? None of us. And the reason is we have no bandwidth to do it. Right? That something comes down for rewrite, AFI 13-1, Vol 2, or Vol 3, or Vol 1. When I see those pop into my inbox, I groan. And I'm sure you do the same, because it's like, when am I gonna find time to read a 100-page document and then fill out a CRM that is not that intuitive to use, and then send it back for comments in the hope that some of my comments will be accepted? Well, if we have a group plans and program shop, they would be the ones that would get those documents. They would do an initial review of the documents, bring in some SMEs, or send the document down to a SMEs for specific sections. And then the document would go back to them to consolidate all the comments, and then out the door, back to the POC with all the ideas. You know, so they're gonna do some of the work that we're just not able to do down at the tactical level. There might be a CPI component at the group level someday. Rick Sear just came to talk to me about that yesterday. He's like, hey, I hear XP is a thing, CPI, are we gonna be able to do this? Are you falling asleep during the question you asked me? I'm just kidding. You're not falling asleep. Rick Sear, your eyes got a little heavy. Rick Sear, asked that question because he's very interested in CPI, and so I'm like, not right now, but eventually, a CPI shop would belong at the group level. There might be, IG. The IG wouldn't fall into XP, but it sure would work closely with XP, developing exercises that affect, helping XP develop exercises that they could do IG things with that affect both the ADS and the SS. The exercises component of XP will do exercises that bring in the CFP, bring in security forces. So now it's not the ADS asking for SS help, it's the group saying, for this exercise, all of these people are gonna play. So that's what an XP is gonna buy us. It bumps up these authorities to a slightly higher, or one echelon higher, so that there's a common voice directing the squadrons to do some things. The benefit to the squadron is we can focus on tactical stuff. We're not doing full requirements for the sector anymore. We are not doing exercises where we are coordinating with 1st Air Force and their exercises shop, and taking bandwidth away from doing tactical stuff, right? So we're gonna skinny down to what a tactical level squadron looks like. Stand eval, weapons and tactics, training, current operations, intelligence, and that's what a squadron should be, right? We're focused on the operation on that floor. The group will handle the care and feeding of the squadrons. Does that answer your question? What we're gonna get out of an XP shop?
It also provides that professional development growth opportunity to move from the squadron and the tactical level to the next higher level. It's not the operational, but it's that stepping stone in your professional development from the squadron to the group.
Yeah, and staff-wise, Skip falls under me right now as the chief of DOX, right? That's not where Colonel Fawcett belongs. He's a commander, and he should be up at the group level. So that's gonna be another thing. Every time a Canadian component commander comes in, there's no question about where they go. They go to the XP shop, and they'll have a deputy, US deputy that works for them. And there will be those fleet up opportunities for people to go up to the group for a little while. Does that mean that, like, this logical progression of your career is you stay in the squadron, you get to the top of the squadron, and then you go to the group? No, that's not what that means. You could be a tech sergeant and go to the group. You could be a captain and go to the group. As a matter of fact, we've got planned for 2 captains to go to the group level. So don't think of it as this linear progression where you end up in the group at the top of your career. The group has certain positions in there that are lower ranking individuals. It's just a different experience, and you'll go and get that different experience, and then you'll come back. So yeah, that's kind of how the fleet up will work.
From Facebook Live, Tony Milton asks, has it been decided how large the XP shop will be? And are the personnel who go to the shop decided by the PMB? Also, will this impact operational manning in any significant way?
So I'll address the first question first. It will not impact manning because everywhere that the bodies came from, we're on staff already. There are 9 total positions in the XP. I think we're gonna fill 8 of them. And then Tyler Royster is going to be part-time deputy. I can't afford to break him out as an MCC, so he's gonna do the deputy of XP as an additional duty. So, the names have been chosen, and the reason they were chosen was because we are divesting ourselves of most DOM duties and DOX duties, and that is going to the group. We need to have a requirements component still in the squadron, because we need to feed the group what we need. And so they will work with DOK. So Nicole Calder will still be superintendent of DOM. This was decided yesterday after the PMB. So Nicole will be the superintendent of DOM. Pierce will still be the superintendent of DOK, and they will both fall under Captain Hutchison, whose title will change to ADO of whatever, I don't know, ADO of good hair or something like that. No, ADO of
Hair
something. So he's still gonna be in charge of DOK and DOM, but that'll keep two superintendents there working underneath Hutchinson. And he doesn't know that yet, so surprise. But yeah, that's the case. So I think I answered all the questions. In the future, the PNB will be the place where it is decided who goes to XP. But right now, it's just ADS XP, and I want to make sure that's clear. I don't want anybody to leave this room or leave your bedroom or living room, wherever you are, and say that, oh, we've got I think it was spoken to me the other day, a wing level XP shop. We don't even have a wing, let alone a wing XP. So there's not even a group XP shop yet, but we will have one in the future, near future.
Sir, you mentioned, at least in the P&B, that the XP shop will also be doing a state partnership program. Is that the intent for that shop to also be where all of that comes from?
Yep.
Makes sense?
Yeah, I forgot about that, thank you. So right now, the SPP is kind of ad hoc. It comes to the ADS because we have the preponderance of manpower. And then we'll go to the SS and see if there's any equities that the SS has. Like we're working with Malaysia on a radar acquisition that's a little on hold right now, but Bruce Roby and Lieutenant Hughes are great additions to a team to come in and help with that Malaysian radar acquisition and sighting. But the coordination isn't as smooth as it could be. So all the SPP stuff is held at the group level. They figure out what trips are needed for SPP, what things we're doing with SPP, and then Tyler has all of Thailand. So anything Thailand related that comes into the building, Tyler Royster will handle. Anything Malaysia that comes into the building, I'll let Colonel Fawcett figure out where that goes, but I'm guessing it'll probably be US personnel, and he has only a few to choose from in there. So I'm pretty sure I know where Malaysia's gonna go as well. And that'll all be at the XP shop. Okay? We got some cool trips coming up with Thailand. Right now, I think we've not secured funding, but we've requested funding for 2 SMEs, what we call subject matter expert exchanges. One focused on data link and the other focused on battle management, command and control. One happening in November, battle management, command and control processes, I should say. One happening in November, the other happening in the May timeframe. We're still trying to nail down dates. Tyler's working on his fluent Thai, so he can really coordinate properly to get these dates nailed down and figure out who's going to go. But 4 travelers will be going on each trip. And yeah, we're looking to spread the love. There does need to be some continuity from trip to trip, because culturally it is nice to have a familiar face as you're going over there and build these relationships, right? So there probably will be a team lead for each one, and it'll be the same person going each time, but I'll leave that up to Major Royster to pick the bodies to go. That's my intent. All right, what else? Jason, you have a question?
No, sir, you did a great job.
Thank you.
Were you gonna talk about accountability, or did you already do that?
You're holding me accountable. I like it. See, we're already there. We are gonna talk about accountability. I just wanna make sure, that our communication is improved by answering all of your questions. And sometimes I just pause after I ask if anybody has questions, because I wanna give somebody the opportunity to speak up when they're not necessarily ready to speak up. I know there was, let's talk, Lean In real quick. So the first Lean In, group met. It was awesome. I think like 30, different, of course they're different, 30 women showed up, and participated. And then there were about 8 complaints, about why can't men be involved in the group. And so, I'll just restate my previous statement that you're not excluded, but you're not necessarily invited yet. All right, that does not mean that you can't go. All right, you can go. I'm not gonna, the leadership is not going to keep you from going. But what we are gonna do is we're gonna have an informational session led by Sergeant Osborne and Captain Roberts. And that is open to everybody. Men are extremely encouraged to come, so they can talk to you guys about what Lean In is and what the point of it is, and how there is no special access to leadership because of this group. You know, everybody has access to the leadership. I found it a little bit ironic that people went to leadership of the organization and said, but they get special access to you. And yet they're sitting on the person's couch telling the person how much access these other people are getting to them. And they're having a one-on-one conversation right there. You know, so it's just a little bit incongruous, the thought process. So that informational session will happen. Everybody please come, and we can have a very frank discussion about what you like about Lean In, what you don't like, what your concerns are, and the airmen who have set this thing up will answer your questions very candidly, and why it's needed, and what it is and what it isn't, and why it shouldn't be threatening, and you can share your thoughts on it. Okay, non-retributional, unless you're a jerk, and then just don't be a jerk, right? Be a good human. Okay, does anybody have any questions about the Lean In? Okay, cool. With that, we'll launch into accountability. I'll share a couple thoughts, and then I'll open it up to the room. What is accountability? And I think, in my mind, there's a couple different aspects of accountability, not that stand out to me. It is multifaceted what accountability actually is, but 2 of them stand out to me. And that is being accountable, keeping people accountable who work for you, and setting a standard. And when people don't meet that standard, letting them know they haven't met that standard. And if the not meeting the standard is so egregious, then making sure there are consequences for not meeting that standard and not brushing things under the rug. So what do I mean by all of this? I mean, feedback is critical, not just midterm feedback and OPRs and EPRs, okay? My brother went to go work for a civilian company, and he said it was one of the most incredible things to see how a civilian company, a high-performing civilian company, does feedback. His boss brings him in weekly at the end of the week and says, all right, Scott, you did this, this, and this week that I know about. Here's what I liked about what you did, and here's what I didn't like about what you did. And it was, I mean, my brother's getting all this negative feedback initially, it's getting better. But he was just so happy that he was getting feedback. And he did 20 years in the Air Force. And he had never gotten feedback like this before. So supervisors, it's not just a title. You need to be meeting with your person that you supervise once a week. And you can't tell them, you're doing everything great. You're doing everything wonderful. You gotta have that hard conversation. And this hits the previous letter of professionalism. And it hits the next letter of courage, right? You need to have professional courage to hold people accountable and sit down and say, you're screwing this up, or you could do this better. And the person that's receiving the feedback needs to go, okay, that hurts, oh, that hurts. But I understand it's coming from a place of professionalism. In some cases, we've known each other for a long time. It's coming from a place of love. Where you're like, you suck at this, and your career is gonna be significantly impacted if you don't improve in this area. Now, you can choose better words, you don't have to say you suck at this. But that's important. It's also important to tell people that they're doing things well. And it's not just to make them feel better. Because if we're concerned about feelings all the time, we're not really gonna hold people accountable. But the most important part of telling people what they're doing well and holding them accountable for that is so they keep doing it. Right? You want them to keep doing the things that they're doing well. And if you don't reinforce it with feedback, then they might stop doing it. And what fills that void is maybe something that you don't necessarily want them to be doing. Right? So you gotta tell them what they're doing well. So that's supervisor to the subordinate. In my mind, we need to hold ourselves accountable. Okay, one of my pet peeves is when I tell somebody they do something wrong and the first thing out of their mouth is an excuse. Okay, we might get to excuses later, but the first thing out of your mouth when you're told that you've done something wrong should not be an excuse. Okay, you should seek to understand from the person giving you this feedback exactly what they view that you did wrong, right? And then maybe as we seek to understand what this feedback actually is, those excuses kind of melt away. And you can see, oh, maybe I am culpable, and maybe I did have a hand in that. I gotta tell you, if somebody below you, your subordinate, screws up, you screwed up too. I mean, crap rolls uphill in the military, it really does. A lot of times it feels like it rolls downhill. I understand, especially for the people at the bottom of the hill. They're like, I am covered in crap down here. But in an organization that is doing it right, that crap should be rolling uphill as well. Because if we're not holding our leaders accountable, and when things get screwed up, that the leadership isn't taking heed, then we're doing it wrong. When an airman doesn't meet a suspense, I look at the supervisor and I go, why didn't that airman meet that suspense? Why did that airman screw this up? You know, and you didn't make sure they got it done. And then after a while, it doesn't make sense. You know, should General Doherty be held responsible for something a three-striper did down here? No. But if there's an epidemic of that, then what kind of culture has he created in the Washington National Guard? You know, that's why right now when you get a DUI, there is some guidance that we're trying to confirm, but the guidance is that is a letter of reprimand from the Adjutant General that you got a DUI. Now, why would he do that? He's probably doing that because in organizations that aren't ours, there have been lots of DUIs, and he's finally had enough, and he's like, I want them standing in front of me, and I want to tell them personally just how disappointed I am in them. So that's an example of leadership holding even the lowest level of the organization accountable when there is a trend and a culture and things like that, right? But mid-level management, you, me, NCOs in the room, our job is to make sure we nip any sort of systemic problem in the bud before it even starts. So those are my thoughts on accountability. I'll open it up to you guys. We got about 20 minutes. I promise we're gonna get out here on the hour, not a minute after. All right, so anybody, let me frame the conversation real quick. What are we doing right in holding people accountable, and what are we doing wrong? What have we screwed up? And it can be a very specific instance, and we'll address that. All right?
Just a comment on accountability and personal accountability, and you're saying, hey, you know, excuses aren't acceptable, but neither is deflection. Deflecting, you know, the product or the blame to another area, you know, with not saying it's not my fault, but hey, here's my alibi, which is something you should have owned as the person doing that particular task, giving that particular briefing, owning that. I say owning the slide. You're briefing it, you're standing in front of the XYZ, doesn't matter who it is, and owning it, not deferring that, oh, I didn't build this, you know, the classic, I didn't build the slide, or I never got a chance to update it, or, you know, that happens from time to time, but when it becomes systemic, that's an accountability problem.
It's all about delivery too, right? An excuse can very quickly become an alibi if you just change the delivery a little bit. If you ever find yourself blaming someone else, you're probably screwing up, you know? So, take ownership of your part in what's happening. Now, there are exceptions to the rule. If somebody is so wildly off base, and Rick, can I use you as an excuse, or as an example real quick?
Yes, sir.
So the email that Rick sent out the other day about the voting assistance officer, and the election that was happening, the attachment to that was a ballot that had Rick Knutson's name on it, and he was running for school board. My frame of reference was officers are not allowed to run for school board. They're not allowed to run for any elected position, whether it's bipartisan or nonpartisan or whatever, unless it's on a military reservation. The reason I know this is because I asked a question of a whole bunch of lawyers back when I wanted to run for something, and they told me, no way, you cannot. So I called Rick into my office and I kind of yelled at him, and Rick took it, and then he went back to his office and he sat down, looked up the statute, and brought it to Christina, and Christina politely set it on my desk, and it clearly said, Colonel Bergen, you are an idiot. It didn't, but what it did say was enlisted members of the military are allowed to run for school board, and other nonpartisan elected offices, and it gives a few, right? I was wrong, I was totally wrong. So Rick did not stand there and make excuses and things like that, but what he did do, he professionally took the feedback, and then he went back and got proof and said, sir, I respectfully disagree with you, and here it is. So he held me accountable, you know, and Rick, I think I apologized, but I'm sorry, I screwed that up, and I yelled at you before I had all the facts. Yeah, that's just an example in our unit of what recently happened, and Rick doing it the right way, and not making excuses, but yet still making his case. What else?
You touched on this in the opening comments. In the flight plan, it talks, when you talk about accountability, you talk about finding people doing good things, right things, and then not hammering people, right, when they do the wrong things, but focus on how we can get it right. How do you, for me, accountability, you know, a lot of it is internal, like you said, like, are you gonna come out and say you made a mistake, right? Because a lot of it, I think, goes unnoticed, possibly. So how as a supervisor do you see, how do you create that environment, you as the commander, that people feel that they're not gonna get hammered if they come forward and say, hey, I messed this up? You know, are there examples of how you've shown that in this organization, or how can we as supervisors foster that environment within, you know, our chain as well?
I'm trying to think of a specific example. Right now all I have is my words to tell you that if you make a mistake, and if you own that mistake and come to me and say, I screwed this up, and this is how I'm gonna fix it, that's another important part, right? This is how I'm gonna mitigate the impact, or this is how I'm gonna fix the problem. The consequences will be, if there are any, will be much less severe than if there is some sort of cover-up or significant delay in trying to sweep it under the rug. And that's what I do with my daughter. You guys aren't my children, I'm not gonna make that metaphor, but I can share with you a story about my daughter where I caught her red-handed doing something, and I could see in her eyes, oh, she wanted to lie. She totally wanted to lie about it. But she thought about it, and she told me the truth. And I should have taken her phone and smashed it with a hammer under normal circumstances, but I showed her some grace. And I explained to her, you had the opportunity to completely lie to me and not own this, and you didn't. And so you lose your phone for a couple days, and then every time you and I walk into the house, you and I have to put our phones in a drawer in the kitchen, so we're not on them. And we're actually gonna talk to each other and spend some time. That lasted about 3 days. But it's a nice thought. But no, that's my philosophy, you know, is if you are genuine and earnest and you own the mistake, man, what a what a growth opportunity. You know, I love telling people I screwed up. I really do. It's so cathartic. And it just lets you get stuff off of your shoulders. So it's not a one mistake WADS, it's not a one mistake Air Force anymore, unless you're 06 or higher, and then it's like half a mistake Air Force, and then you're gone. But that's okay, that's the way it is.
So then would you say that one of the key factors to fostering that environment then is relationships with people?
See what you're doing, you're leading the witness. And yes, totally relationships, because you gotta trust the person, right? You have to trust the person that you're going to hold true to their word, you know. And if somebody does not demonstrate grace and forgiveness, then and you witness that once, you're not going to go to them and tell them the truth. You're going to do everything you can to sweep it under the rug, and then all of a sudden we have an organization that we're sweeping everything under the rug. We were joking earlier, me and Colonel Thiessen, and it's so funny that when a list comes out, like a non-CMR list or an ancillary training list or something like that, some organizations, and even this one, will scrub the names of the commanders off of the list, right? And then publish the list without the names of the commanders on there, because we can't have the commander's name on that list. Oh, no, that'd be horrible. I'm like, no, put my name on that list. I screwed that up, you know, and it gives me an opportunity. And you guys should be like so happy that my name's on the list, because I can't come around and yell at you for being non-current or whatever. But I will stand in front of you and I'll say, I screwed up, I'm on the list too, but I'm gonna get it done tomorrow. And as soon as I get it done, I'll say, when are you gonna get it done? You got 3 days to get it done, you know? So until I'm squeaky clean, I can't hold you accountable. But building relationships, absolutely. Speed of Trust, read the book. It's by Covey, not the father, but the son. And it's all about the critical importance of trust in an organization. You have to trust that I and your supervisor and the people above you are going to take care of you. And if we all of a sudden have a breach of that trust, we have a breakdown of good order and discipline in our organization. Okay, and supervisors, you gotta do it. If you break that trust, you will never get it back. You will damage the relationship with your subordinate. You will damage your reputation. So if you say you're gonna do something, you do it, okay? If you say you're gonna follow my intent and the flight plan, then you do it. The only way you can know what's in there is by reading it and referencing it and saying, this is where the commander stands on these issues, and so therefore this is where I stand on these issues. All right? It's kind of like an AFI. You can add to it, but you can't take anything away. All right? So please add your own, like when we talk about empowerment and things like that, add your own style, add your own spin, but you can't not empower people. You cannot take away people's empowerment because we're not the ones giving it to them. Colonel Humphrey mentioned this at his all call. If I say to you, Megan, I empower you, well, guess what? That's still me lording over you, saying, I give you the right to do something. No, the fact that you're wearing this uniform and you have that rank on your chest means that you have these inherent authorities and empowerment. And the only thing I can do is take that away from you, and I'm not going to. And nobody in this organization should. All right, relationships and trust, critically important to accountability. Thank you, John. Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
I'm gonna take a nap now.
Okay, you already did, so.
2 naps are better than 1.
It was funny, he wasn't sleeping, but it was his eyes, I could see his eyes. But it's all right, because he's in the gym where you wake up at 3:45, 3:40, to come in and work out at 5 in the morning. All of you are invited, and one of General Goldfein's 5 elements is fitness. That is one of his focus areas because it has become such a problem in the Air Force. We are, behind the Army, we are the most unfit force. The Navy's got us beat on this one, guys. So General Goldfein is fitness is part of our culture now. And so 5 a.m., we're in the gym, come join us. It's a lot of fun. It's hard, but hard things are hard. So wake up, go to bed earlier, wake up, come join us. That's me holding you accountable for your fitness. See you there, Tyler.
I don't know if it's necessarily a question, but a comment. So to speak of General Goffin, at the recent Air Force symposium that he went to, he talked about the frozen middle and how like they're trying to push everything down to like the squadron level. And so he says that the frozen middle isn't necessarily always a bad thing, because sometimes, you know, you need people to kind of take a look at some things and be willing to say, hey, we need to slow this down, or maybe look at it differently. So he said that, you know, push it down to the squadron level. Since we're at the squadron level, do you see anywhere that we might have that whole quote unquote frozen middle? And if there's, you know, something that, you know, you think we should do to be differently, especially speaking about accountability. And if you can segue that into the tactical down day that we're gonna be doing, as far as like the stress and everything else, as far as like what the supervisor should be doing, looking out for their people.
Yep. Do I think we have a frozen middle? I suspect we do. I think it's inevitable in any organization. And what frozen middle, it doesn't mean that the middle ranks are frozen. It just means that the speed and ease of communication in the organization is not where it could be, right? And things stop at a certain level and just die. Yeah, I think in some aspects we do, and in some we don't. And it's talks like this where I continually remind everybody, let's take care of our people. Let's make sure that the commander and the chief are hearing about issues. Let's make sure that the bullet background paper program that we have and the continuous process improvement, that we are giving people a mechanism that where their voices are heard. So that's what's going to fix the frozen middle. Now, if General Goffin said the frozen middle isn't necessarily a bad thing, with all due respect, I'm going to slightly disagree with the General and say that a completely frozen middle is a bad thing. But a cautious, maybe a slushy, yeah, a slushy middle, yeah, could be a good thing. Caution is important. You know, if you have a commander who's just like, yeah, let's do it, that might get everybody in trouble and get the commander fired. So I want a slushy middle. Yeah, not necessarily frozen, but cautious.
I think where you're gonna find that on a squadron, and I don't go into any specific entity, is where manpower prohibits the rapid flow of whatever it is, taskers, information, just because the manpower is such that an entity is overtasked or overprescribed. So that's where you get that stalling of stuff, and stuff goes below the line, and
Yep.
you can't take it. And I know the DO was looking at, hey, what is the right manage?
That's exactly what I was gonna bring up. I love what Hum's doing and saying, what can't you do? What aren't you doing now? And what are you doing? Right? And if the things you aren't doing now we deem critically important, then we gotta find a way for you to be able to do those things. Right? And the frozen middle is probably in that what aren't you doing now bucket. Right? And so if we're finding that our processes and our mission is being impacted because of a frozen middle, let's look at the things that we aren't doing, figure out how we do get to do them. Maybe by trimming some of these things over here that you are doing, and we go, well, that's not important anymore. Well, it is important, but it's not as important as this stuff. So I do think that Colonel Campbell is going to be very successful in getting the middle slushy.
And then can you connect that with the tactical pause coming up and how accountability with supervisors to make sure that we're looking out for people?
You did have a second part, didn't you? Two-part question. What I can tell you about the tactical pause is that it will be in the middle of November, and it'll be very small, small group sessions, and Gil Maldonado is going to be running it. And I'm not answering your question, and I realize that. How does that apply to a frozen middle? I'm trying to make the connection in my head. holding each other accountable.
I guess like if you have someone who's, you know, going through personal issues or is needing to seek help outside of the unit, you know, having a supervisor who's supportive rather than maybe looking at it as, you know, it's.
Yeah, okay, no, I'll make a connection, 'cause we've had this
Okay.
we've had this conversation before, and I got 2 minutes. So, and this is a great note to end it on. If somebody is having trouble, and needs guidance, or needs to have an appointment outside of the unit, I need you as supervisors to respect that we support our airmen, the concept that we support our airmen, right? And yes, airmen are required to be in the building 40 hours a week, or be on duty 40 hours a week to make sure the taxpayers is getting their worth out of the airmen. But if that airman is not functioning well during that 40 hours because we're not getting them the help that they need, then we're not meeting the intent, right? So I guess that's a lot of words to say, let your people go seek help, all right? And I don't know how to make that more loud and clear. If they have to go seek financial help, if they have to go seek mental help, if they need to go to the doctor for physical issues, let your airmen go. It reaches a point though where somebody could take advantage of the system. I get that. We'll address those issues on an individual basis, all right? But if somebody needs to get help, let them get help, okay? Because what the last thing we want is denying somebody the help that they need and then some really horrible things resulting from that. And then we have failed our airmen, we have failed our unit. So don't try to draw a hard line in the sand and say, oh, you wanna take a 2-hour lunch to go over to mental health? Well, I need you here. Let's find a way to let that person go over to mental health, all right? Come talk to me, I'll help you find a way. All right, that's it, guys. We're at an hour.
Real quick, Chief Doyle wanted to, she's on Facebook Live with Colonel Humphrey.
Chief, you made me time bust.
So I want to put this out there. She just said accountability grows leaders and the best supervisors. Mistakes happen, own it and reflect. We're all human, but if we don't know it is a mistake, then we will continue to make them. Out of the chief call that she had yesterday, they're working on a counseling role-playing exercise for WAD, so just want to make sure you have that out there.
Awesome, thank you, Chief. Great points. All right, thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. If you have any questions for me, I'm going back to my office. You can grab me in there and we can talk. All right, was this beneficial? We'll do it again next month. Courage, we'll talk about courage. All right, see y'all, thank you. As you were.